The unexpected rescue. The night sky was clear, and the stars above twinkled like distant diamonds, silent and untouched. A lone figure, tall and sturdy, trekked through the desolate land of an alien world. His name was Jack, a human explorer, sent on a mission to survey unknown planets. The mission was supposed to be routine, just a quick stop, and then back home to Earth. But the moment he stepped foot on this barren, strange planet, everything changed. Jack had been walking for hours, his boots crunching the dry, cracked earth beneath him. The air was thick with an unfamiliar scent, a mix of sulfur and something sweet yet nauseating. He pulled his jacket tighter against the chill that settled over the landscape. There was no sign of life, nothing but the endless stretch of rocky terrain, when suddenly he heard something, a faint, almost imperceptible cry. Curiosity stirred inside him, and without thinking, he followed the sound. It wasn't long before he came across a small hidden valley, and there, lying among the jagged rocks, was something that stopped him in his tracks. At first, he thought it was just another rock formation, but as he approached, he saw it, a girl. Her skin shimmered under the alien moonlight, not human, but not entirely alien either. She was curled up, weak and battered, as though she had been dragged through a harsh and unforgiving landscape. Her face was bruised, and her clothes were torn, but it was the deep, unnatural blue of her eyes that caught Jack's attention. "Hey, are you all right?" Jack's voice broke through the stillness of the valley. There was no answer, but the girl stirred slightly, as though she could hear him. He crouched down beside her, instinctively reaching out to touch her shoulder. She gasped, her eyes snapping open, wide and fearful. For a moment, they just stared at each other, neither knowing what to do next. Jack had been trained for situations like this, but nothing in his training prepared him for this moment. She wasn't human. There was no mistaking that. Her skin, a soft shade of teal, glowed faintly, and her ears were slightly pointed. But despite the strange features, there was something deeply human about the way she looked at him, full of fear, but also a glimmer of hope. "Don't worry, I'm here to help," Jack said, his voice soft, trying to calm her. He took off his jacket and gently draped it over her shivering body. The girl tried to sit up, but her body trembled in exhaustion. She opened her mouth, but no words came out, just a strained whisper, as though the very act of speaking was too much for her. Jack's heart sank. "Don't try to speak. I'll get you some help," he assured her. Though he had no idea who could help them on this forsaken planet, he carefully lifted her in his arms. She was surprisingly light, though. Her body felt fragile. Her skin was warm against his, and the scent of the alien world seemed to mix with the scent of her, the strange sweet fragrance that had filled the air earlier. He had no idea what he was getting into, but he couldn't leave her here alone. To die. The girl closed her eyes as if in relief, resting her head on his chest. Jack turned to make his way back toward his ship, a small transport pod not far from here. But before he could take a step, a shadow moved across the horizon. He stopped, his instincts kicking in. Something was wrong. A soft hum filled the air, growing louder. Suddenly, a craft appeared, slicing through the sky like a knife, and landing with a thunderous thud not far from him. Its sleek metallic surface gleamed under the pale moonlight. Jack froze, gripping the girl tighter in his arms. He could see them now, figures emerging from the craft, humanoid but alien. They wore dark uniforms with symbols he didn't recognize, their faces stern and unfeeling. Jack's heart raced as they approached, their footsteps thudding heavily in the ground. One of them, a tall alien with dark red skin and glowing white eyes, stepped forward. His voice echoed with authority. "Release her. She belongs to us," the alien said, his tone sharp and commanding. Jack's mind raced. He had no idea what these beings wanted, but he wasn't about to let them take the girl. "She's hurt. She needs help," Jack protested, holding her closer to him. The alien did not flinch. Instead, he reached for something on his belt, a small device that hummed with energy. It's too late for help. You've broken the laws of our people. She was meant to die, and now you have made her yours. Jack frowned. What? What are you talking about? The alien raised an eyebrow, as if surprised by Jack's ignorance. She is from the royal bloodline. She was to be abandoned here to die, as per our law. Now that you've saved her, you must pay the price. Jack's stomach turned. The girl. In his arms shifted slightly, her breathing shallow. What price? Jack demanded, his voice tight with anger. The alien's lips curled into a cold smile. You must keep her. She belongs to you now. Jack's mind raced. He had saved her, but this wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a matter of alien law. He had no idea what he was getting himself into, but one thing was clear. He wasn't about to let these strangers take her from him. With a deep breath, Jack turned away from the alien and began walking toward his ship, carrying the girl in his arms. She's mine now, Jack muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. And I won't let anyone take her. The alien's voice followed them, cold and unyielding. You may have saved her life, but according to our law, she must belong to you, forever. The consequences of saving her. Jack could feel the weight of the girl's presence as he carefully carried her toward his ship. Every step seemed heavier than the last, as though the air around him had thickened with every passing second. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of what the alien had just said. She belonged to him now, not because of love or choice, but because of a law he couldn't even begin to understand. As he reached the transport pod, Jack gently laid her down on the cushioned seat. The ship was small, but enough to get them off. This cursed planet. He paused for a moment, looking down at the girl. Her once bright blue eyes now held an emptiness that troubled him. She was still too weak to speak, but the subtle tremor in her body told him she was afraid of him. Afraid of what the future held. The engines roared to life as Jack strapped himself into the pilot's seat. The ship lifted off the ground, and soon they were soaring through the alien atmosphere, leaving the planet behind. Jack looked out the window, but his thoughts weren't on the beauty of the distant stars or the smooth flight. His mind was consumed with the alien law and the girl lying unconscious behind him. Who were these beings? Why did they see her as nothing more than a possession? He was just a man, a human who had found her in the middle of nowhere. What kind of law could claim someone's life like this? As the ship sped through the stars, Jack heard a weak voice. Please, don't take me back, the girl whispered, her voice barely audible. They will make you suffer. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He turned around in his seat, his eyes locking with hers. I won't let them take you anywhere, he promised, his voice low but firm. I don't even understand what's going on, but I'll protect you. The girl's lips parted as if she wanted to say something more, but she didn't have the strength. Instead, she closed her eyes and drifted into an exhausted sleep. Jack knew he had to get answers, and fast. The law the alien spoke of wasn't just some random rule. It was powerful, far-reaching, and it was binding. But Jack wasn't about to sit back and let this law dictate the future of someone he had saved. He needed to know more about her, about the society that had turned her life into a set of rules, and most importantly, what his role in this strange mess was supposed to be. Hours passed, and the ship continued to cut through the cold void of space. Jack made several course adjustments, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He pulled up the ship's navigation system and tried to find the closest planet with any information on alien laws. There had to be a way to contact someone, anyone who could explain what he was dealing with. Just as he was about to input coordinates for a nearby space station, an alarm went off. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, a warning that something was wrong. The lights inside the cockpit flickered. Jack's eyes snapped to the console, trying to understand what was happening. Suddenly, the entire ship jerked violently, throwing him against his seat. Damn it! Jack cursed, struggling to regain control. A harsh metallic voice came over the comm system, and his blood ran cold. "You cannot escape the law, human. Return the girl to us at once." Jack's hand flew to the controls, trying to steady the ship. He looked at the girl, still unconscious and unaware of the danger. The voice on the comms crackled again. "If you do not comply, we will track you down and forcefully take her back. The law is absolute. There is no escape." Jack's pulse quickened. He wasn't sure if it was the alien's voice or the gravity of their words, but everything in him screamed that he wasn't going to let this happen. He had made a promise to protect her, and he wasn't going to break that promise. "I'm not going to let you take her," Jack muttered under his breath, his grip tightening on the controls. He knew he wasn't prepared for this, not in the slightest. He was just a human, no different than anyone else back home. But in that moment, the girl's life depended on him, and that was enough to make him fight. Jack made a decision. He couldn't go back, not now. But he needed help. He couldn't do this alone. He set a course for the nearest known colony, a trading outpost where humans and aliens lived together. Maybe, just maybe, he could find some answers there. Before he could engage the warp drive, another warning flashed across the console. He was being tracked. The alien ship that had warned him was already moving in. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming. Jack knew he had no time to waste. He was caught in a race against time, with the girl's life hanging in the balance. The law was coming for them both, and there was no turning back now. "Hold on," Jack whispered to the girl, his voice full of determination. "We're not going back." Training for the trials, the deep silence of space was a strange comfort to Jack as the ship soared toward the distant colony. He had put everything behind him, Earth, his mission, and the simple life he had known. Now the girl, an alien bound by a law she could neither fight nor escape, was the only thing on his mind. She had not spoken since they left the alien planet, still too weak to do more than sleep fitfully. Jack had found a makeshift medical kit in the ship's storage and had managed to stabilize her injuries, but there was a greater challenge ahead, one that neither of them could avoid. The law was clear. If Jack wanted to keep her, he would have to face the trial set by the alien authorities. The first trial would be a test of strength, a combat challenge against the fiercest warriors of her people. He wasn't a soldier, but Jack was determined to win. It wasn't just about saving her anymore. It was about showing these alien beings that humanity wasn't weak. He wouldn't let the law decide her fate. He had saved her, and he would continue to protect her, no matter the cost. As Jack set the ship's course to a training facility on the colony, his thoughts swirled with anxiety. He was far from prepared for the battle ahead. He'd faced danger before, but nothing like this. The alien warriors would be ruthless, their strength unmatched by anything he had ever experienced. And yet, there was a fire in his chest, a burning need to prove that he could do this. The girl woke up to find the ship's interior illuminated by the soft glow of the control panels. Jack was sitting in the corner, his face tense as he studied a digital map of the colony's training grounds. She blinked, still disoriented from the ordeal, but the moment she saw him, her eyes softened. She could see the determination in his face, the same determination that had pushed him to save her in the first place. "Where are we going?" she asked in a hoarse voice, barely more than a whisper. Jack turned to her, his expression gentle, but serious. "We're going to a place where I can learn to fight for you." Her eyes widened. She wanted to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She had never expected this. She had always been taught that she was nothing more than a pawn in the hands of her people's laws. And yet here was a human, a stranger willing to risk everything for her. It was overwhelming. "You don't have to do this," she said, softly, shaking her head. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into. The trials, they are deadly. No one has ever won the final one." Jack walked over to her, kneeling beside her seat. "I don't care about the odds. I'll do whatever it takes." I didn't save you just to give up now." She swallowed, staring at him with a mix of awe and fear. "But the trials are designed to break you. They'll test everything: your body, your mind, your soul. Even if you survive the first trial, they'll make you question whether you're even human anymore." "I'll survive," Jack said firmly. "And I'll prove to them that no matter what they throw at me, I'm not going to let them take you away." The girl looked down at her hands, her heart heavy with uncertainty. "You don't know the whole story. My people, we are bound by rules that go back centuries. It's not just the trials that are dangerous. The moment you step into their world, you'll be marked. If you win, they'll consider you worthy of me, but that doesn't mean they'll let you leave, and if you lose, they'll execute you." Jack's expression hardened. "Then I'll win." The girl studied him for a moment, searching his face for any hint of doubt. She found none. There was only resolve, the same kind of resolve she had once seen in her own people, before they were broken by the system. But something about him felt different. Jack wasn't fighting for status or power. He was fighting for her. And in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the suffocating grip of alien law. As they approached the colony, Jack prepared himself for the unknown. He had to be strong, not just for himself, but for her. The girl had told him that his body and mind would be tested, but he wasn't worried. The real test would be finding the strength to survive when everything within him screamed to give up. They landed on the colony's training grounds, a sprawling facility that looked like something out of a war zone. Massive arenas surrounded by high-tech weaponry and soldiers preparing for battle. The place was designed to break even the most powerful of warriors. Jack stepped off the ship and took a deep breath. The air was thick with the scent of alien technology and the tension of impending conflict. His heart raced in his chest, but there was no turning back now. The girl joined him, still weak but determined. "You're not alone in this," she said, her voice stronger than before. Jack nodded, grateful for her support, though he knew the true test was only beginning. He would fight for her freedom, for their future, and nothing would stand in his way. The first trial, the atmosphere in the arena was suffocating, a pressure that weighed down on Jack as he stood at the edge of the battleground. Around him, alien spectators filled the stands, their faces cold and uninterested, as though watching death and glory was nothing more than a casual pastime. But for Jack, this was everything. This was his chance to prove that he wasn't just a human to be discarded, that he wasn't just a pawn in someone else's game. He glanced over at the girl, who was standing off to the side, her body still, fragile but her eyes sharp. Her gaze was fixed on him, filled with a mixture of hope and fear. He could feel her worry, but he couldn't let it show. He had to do this not just for her, but for the sake of everything he had promised her. "Don't let them win," she whispered as she stepped closer, her voice barely audible over the murmurs of the crowd. Jack gave her a small, reassuring nod, though inside, his heart was racing. The first trial was a test of strength, a brutal combat challenge against a being far more powerful than any human. The alien warriors that stood opposite him were built for battle, their bodies strong and agile. They were designed to fight, bred for war. And Jack? He was a simple explorer, with no training, no preparation. All he had was the will to survive, and the need to protect her. The trial master, a tall, imposing figure clad in black armor, stepped forward. He raised a hand, signaling the start of the trial. "Your opponent," the trial master announced, his voice echoing across the arena, "is a Death Worlder, a creature who has survived the worst that this galaxy can throw at them. You will have one chance to prove your strength. If you survive, you may proceed to the next trial." Jack's eyes scanned the battlefield. Standing in front of him was a towering alien warrior, his skin a dark metallic gray, his muscles rippling beneath the surface like coiled springs. The creature grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It didn't speak, but its stance said it all. It was ready to destroy. Jack swallowed hard, his fingers tightening around the crude weapon he had been given, a large, jagged sword forged from the alien metals of the arena. It was heavy in his hand, and he could feel the weight of it dragging him down. But he had no choice but to fight. The trial master raised his arm, and with a swift motion, the match began. The alien warrior lunged first, its speed and strength almost too much for Jack to process. It was a blur of movement, its fists like hammers, its claws swiping at Jack's face. He barely dodged in time, the sharp edge of the claws grazing his shoulder. Pain shot through him, but he gritted his teeth and held his ground. Jack swung his sword at the alien, but his strike was sluggish compared to the creature's lightning-fast moves. The alien dodged easily, its grin widening as it seemed to enjoy the challenge. Jack's heart was hammering in his chest, his thoughts racing. He wasn't a fighter, but he had to keep fighting. He had to survive. With a roar, the alien moved in again, its claws slashing through the air. Jack raised his sword just in time to block the attack, but the force behind it sent him crashing to the ground. He gasped for breath, his back aching from the impact. He could feel the blood seeping through his torn shirt, but he couldn't give up. Not now. His mind flashed back to the girl, the look in her eyes as she watched him. She was depending on him. He couldn't let her down. He pushed himself up, his legs shaking, his body screaming for him to stop, but he refused to listen. The alien was fast, but it made a mistake. It underestimated him. Jack lunged forward, using the last of his strength to drive the sword into the alien warrior's chest. It let out a horrific screech, but it was too late. The blade had pierced its heart, and the alien collapsed to the ground in a heap. For a moment, there was silence in the arena. The crowd seemed to be in shock, their alien eyes wide with disbelief. Jack stood over the fallen warrior, his chest heaving with exhaustion, sweat pouring down his face. His hands trembled from the effort, but he held his sword steady, his gaze fixed on the trial master. The trial master's voice echoed through the silence. "You have passed the first trial, human. But this is only the beginning. You have proven yourself in battle, but the next test will require more than just strength. It will test your mind." Jack's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't have time to process the words. He had won the first battle, but the real challenge was just beginning. As the alien warrior's body was dragged away, Jack walked slowly to where the girl was standing, her eyes wide with fear and admiration. She stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. Jack nodded, his expression determined. "It's not over yet." But as he stood there, catching his breath, he realized something important. The first trial was only a taste of what was to come. The alien law would not let him go so easily. And if he wanted to truly save her, he would have to face much darker trials ahead. The test of loyalty. Jack's victory in the first trial had barely sunk in before the next challenge loomed before him. The first trial had been physical, a test of strength and survival. But as he stood in the cold, dimly lit chamber of the alien arena, he realized that what awaited him next was something far more dangerous, a test of loyalty. The room around him was stark, nothing but smooth metal walls that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. The only light came from strange, floating orbs above him, casting long shadows that twisted and warped the space around him. He could feel the weight of the alien law pressing down on him again, heavy like the blade of a sword, poised to strike. Girl, still weak from her earlier injuries, was led into the chamber. Her eyes, once filled with fear, now held a fire that hadn't been there before. She had been silent throughout the entire journey to this chamber, but now, she stepped forward with a strength Jack hadn't expected. "Stay close," Jack whispered to her, his voice low, but she only nodded, her gaze fixed on something in the distance. Jack could sense the unease in her. This trial would not just test him, but them both. The alien law was watching, and he had no idea what it wanted from him this time. As they approached the center of the room, the air shifted. A harsh metallic voice echoed through the chamber. The second trial will test your loyalty to her, human. You must prove your commitment by making a choice. A choice that will either bind you to her or tear you apart. If you fail, you will both pay the price. Jack's stomach clenched. His eyes darted to the girl who stood at his side, her expression unreadable. What choice? He asked, his voice steady despite the rising panic within him. The metallic voice responded coldly. In this room are two paths. One will lead you to freedom for both of you. The other will lead to ruin. The question is simple. Will you give up something precious to save her? Or will you let the law take its course? The floor before them shifted, revealing two doors, each surrounded by a strange glowing symbol. One was dark and foreboding, the other bright, yet strangely distant. Each path promised something different, but neither felt like a victory. The girl's voice cut through the silence, barely above a whisper. You have to choose carefully. If you choose the wrong door, they'll take everything from you. And me ... I'll never be free. Jack turned to face her, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. There was so much at stake, more than he had ever realized when he first picked her up from the alien planet. Saving her was never going to be simple, and this test was the cruelest one yet. What do I have to lose? Jack asked, almost to himself. His eyes scanned both doors again. What would it mean for me to lose something precious? The girl's eyes flickered to the dark door. The law, she said, her voice trembling. It doesn't just take our freedom. It takes our choices, our will to live. If you choose the wrong one, you lose more than you can imagine. Jack swallowed, fighting the rising tide of doubt. He had been a soldier before, and he had made tough decisions, but this felt different. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about a bond, about something deeper than just fighting through the pain. Without thinking, Jack walked toward the bright door, his heart pulling him toward it. He couldn't lose her, not now. Not after everything they had been through. Jack, no. The girl's voice broke through, her words filled with panic. But it was too late. His hand was already on the door, and with a deep breath, he pushed it open. What lay beyond the door was not what he expected. Instead of a path leading to freedom, there was a hollow room, its walls lined with images of his past faces, memories, moments that had defined who he was. The door slammed shut behind him with a loud crash. Trapping him inside. In front of him stood a figure, an older version of himself, worn and scarred by the years. The figure's eyes were cold, but familiar. It was Jack's own reflection, but twisted, as though everything he had ever known was slowly turning against him. You've made the wrong choice, the reflection said, its voice eerily similar to his own. To save her, you must give up the one thing that defines you. Your past, your memories, everything you've ever fought for. Are you willing to sacrifice it all? Jack's heart slammed in his chest. His past, his memories, the very essence of who he was now at stake. This trial wasn't just about saving her. It was about erasing everything he had known and loved to secure her freedom. Behind him, he could feel the girl's presence, her eyes watching, waiting for him to make the impossible choice. Choose wisely, human, the reflection whispered, its eyes boring into his soul. The pressure in the room mounted, suffocating Jack as he tried to process the weight of the decision. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. The choice was so clear now, but it was also more agonizing than anything he had ever faced. I won't lose you, Jack whispered to himself, his voice hoarse. He couldn't let the girl go through this alone, but was he willing to pay the price? The battle for freedom, the air in the arena was thick with anticipation. a feeling of unrest rippling through the crowd. The once cold silence had transformed into an almost tangible energy as the crowd waited, eager for the next trial to unfold. Jack stood at the edge of the battleground, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts, doubts, and fears. But this time, there would be no hesitation. The alien law had made it clear. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Jack wanted to ensure the girl's freedom, he had to face the final trial. It wasn't just a test of strength anymore. It wasn't about survival or loyalty. This was a battle for everything they both held dear. If he lost, everything he had fought for would be destroyed. Standing across from him was his opponent, a towering alien, much larger than anything he had faced before. Its body was covered in thick black armor, its eyes glowing a deep, unsettling red. It was a creature born for war, a symbol of everything Jack had come to fear about the alien world. But Jack wasn't afraid anymore. Not like he used to be. The girl, though still weak from her injuries, had insisted on watching. Her presence, though small, filled him with a strange sense of determination. She had no idea what this trial would cost her, but Jack wasn't going to let her down. He couldn't. Not now, not when the end was so close. The trial master, the same figure who had presided over the first battle, raised his hand, signaling the start of the final contest. The crowd fell silent as the two fighters squared off, the alien warrior's claws flexing as it took a step forward. Jack tightened his grip on the weapon in his hands, a crude, jagged sword, far too light for the kind of battle he was about to face, but it was the only weapon he had. The alien charged first, moving like a shadow, swift and merciless. Jack barely had time to react as the warrior swung its claws in a blur of motion. His body was slammed backward, the force of the blow sending him crashing into the arena floor. Pain exploded through him, but he quickly pushed himself to his feet, forcing himself to breathe through the burning pain in his chest. "You will lose," the alien growled, its voice low and menacing. "The law demands it." Jack's vision blurred as blood trickled from a gash on his forehead, but he couldn't let up. Not now. He wiped the blood from his eyes and gritted his teeth. The girl was depending on him. He couldn't let her down. With a roar, Jack swung his sword at the alien's torso, but the warrior was too fast. It dodged easily, slashing at Jack's side with its claws. The wound was deep, and for a moment, everything seemed to go black. But Jack fought through the pain, refusing to fall. He couldn't let it end like this. "Fight, Jack!" The girl's voice rang out across the arena. "You're stronger than this." Her words were a lifeline, cutting through the chaos in his mind. Jack's eyes locked onto her, seeing her standing at the edge of the arena, watching him with a look of raw determination. She believed in him. He couldn't let her down. The alien swung again, aiming for Jack's throat. But this time Jack was ready. With a swift motion, he stepped to the side, narrowly dodging the blow. He brought his sword down in an arc, catching the alien off guard. The sword bit deep into the creature's side, sending it stumbling backward with a screech of pain, but Jack didn't stop. He advanced, every movement fueled by a singular goal: freedom. For him, for the girl, for both of them. He had no idea how long he could keep up this pace. His muscles screamed in protest, his vision darkened at the edges, and blood coated his skin, but there was no room for weakness. Not now. The alien staggered, its red eyes flashing with fury as it lunged at Jack once more. This time, Jack ducked under the attack, rolling across the arena floor. As he came up on his feet, he saw the opening he needed. The alien's defenses were down, its back exposed, with everything he had left. Jack launched himself at the alien, driving the sword deep into its chest. The creature let out one final roar before crumpling to the ground. Lifeless. Silence fell over the arena. For a long moment, Jack stood there, panting, his sword slick with alien blood. His chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath, the adrenaline slowly draining from his body. He had done it. He had won. But as the alien's body was dragged away, Jack felt an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. The trial was over, but the battle for the girl's freedom was not. The trial master's voice rang out again, cold and unfeeling. You have won the final trial, human. But the law is not so easily broken. You may have earned her freedom, but at what cost? Jack turned toward the trial master, his eyes narrowed with resolve. I don't care what the law says anymore, he said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet fury. I didn't fight for the law. I fought for her. And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure she stays free. The crowd murmured, the alien voices like a distant hum in the background. The girl stepped forward, her eyes full of admiration and something else, hope. For the first time since Jack had found her, she allowed herself to smile. She had been saved, and in that moment, so had he. The law had been broken. And the price? Jack didn't care. He had fought for love, for freedom, and that was worth more than anything the alien law could take from him. A new future. The arena was eerily quiet, a heavy silence settling over the battlefield as the trial master's final words echoed in Jack's ears. The alien warriors, once so sure of their victory, now stood frozen, their eyes wide with disbelief. Jack had done the impossible. He had defeated the champion, won the trials, and earned the girl's freedom. But the real question remained. What would happen now? Jack stood in the center of the arena, his body battered and bruised, his mind still reeling from the chaos of the battle. His chest ached with exhaustion, and his limbs felt like they might give way at any moment. But through it all, there was a single thought that kept him standing. The girl. She was free. He had kept his promise. The girl approached him slowly, her eyes wide with admiration and something deeper, something Jack had never expected. She had always been a prisoner of her own people's laws, bound by the chains of tradition and fate. And yet, here she was, standing before him, no longer a prisoner, no longer a piece in a game she couldn't control. Jack's heart swelled with emotion as he met her gaze. He had saved her life, fought for her freedom, and now they were both free to make their own choices, free to choose a future together. A future they would build, not bound by the laws of an alien empire, but by their own hearts. The trial master, his cold eyes studying them both, raised his hand, signaling for the final judgment to be passed. Jack tensed, but the girl stepped forward, her voice steady and unwavering. I choose him, she said, her words cutting through the tension like a blade. I choose my own fate. I am not bound by law anymore. The trial master's eyes narrowed, but he didn't speak. Instead, he turned and walked away, his silence more powerful than any words he could have said. The crowd, too, remained quiet. They had witnessed a human defeat the odds, break the unbreakable, and claim what was his by sheer willpower. But they didn't understand what it meant. They didn't understand the strength it took to choose love over the law. Jack felt the weight of the moment settle over him, the enormity of what they had accomplished. It wasn't just about surviving the trials. It was about fighting for something bigger, fighting for their right to be together, to exist beyond the restrictions of alien laws and rules. The girl stepped closer to him, her gaze softening as she placed a hand on his arm. You saved me, she whispered, her voice full of emotion. But you've given me something more than freedom. You've given me hope. Jack looked down at her, his heart swelling with a mix of pride and love. No, he said quietly, we gave each other hope. You taught me what it means to fight for something worth dying for. The girl smiled, and for the first time since he had found her, Jack saw a sense of peace in her eyes. She wasn't just free in body, she was free in spirit. And for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged, not to an alien law or to fate, but to herself and to him. They stood together in the center of the arena, the weight of their journey behind them, and the unknown future stretching out ahead. It was a future filled with uncertainty, but also with possibility. "Where do we go from here?" she asked, her voice filled with a quiet curiosity. Jack turned toward the horizon, the first light of dawn beginning to break over the alien landscape. For the first time, he didn't feel the crushing weight of duty or responsibility. Instead, he felt something else: freedom. Freedom to choose his path. Freedom to build a life with her, wherever they decided to go. "Wherever we want." Jack said, his voice filled with a quiet confidence. "We make our own rules now." And with that, they turned and walked away from the arena, leaving behind the laws and the empire that had once ruled them. They were no longer bound by anything but their own will, their own hearts, and the new future they would create together.